Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming today to this amazing event, and thank you to the guys for some real insight into the technical side of Formula One. We're going to change it up a little bit now and talk more about the sporting side of Formula One, and to do that with me is someone a lot of people here know. Apparently he was mobbed when he came in, well that's what he told me anyway. Former Indycar driver and broadcaster James Hinchcliffe. So we just heard a lot of technical stuff there about Formula One, and obviously that's one side of the sport, but sometimes we forget how amazing this sport is from a sporting perspective inside the car. Now there's only 20 Formula One drivers out there, but you've done something special this year and actually driven a Formula One driver. So just to kick off, I just want you to explain to everyone here what it's actually like to drive a Formula One car.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me here, and everybody, thanks for coming. Incredible opportunity. You know, I raced IndyCar for 11 years, an incredible machine, great racing, all of that stuff. But I think every driver secretly wants to at least taste a Formula One car one time. And it's ironic that for me it happened once I retired from IndyCar racing and got into broadcasting. They put me in as a TV presenter, not as a driver, which probably is a smart move. But honestly, you know, again, having spent a career driving, you know, very high performance race cars of all sorts, and I've been lucky to drive all types of different cars, there is something so indescribable about what a Formula One car is capable of. It is, the best I can describe it is, you know, imagine an F-18 fighter jet glued to the ground. The performance capability of these machines, it's tough to wrap your head around. Even as someone who's had a career 20 years racing, it was still tough for me to believe that the car was capable of doing what I was asking it to do. And there was still margin to go. So, unbelievable opportunity. It was the Haas team that allowed me to do that. There's a whole feature on F1 TV that we shot for that. It's going to actually air in the pre-race show this weekend. And I haven't seen it yet. I'm excited to see it, just to get to relive the day.
For someone that's driven around the Indy 500 and got pole position at the Indy 500, so if you didn't know that, that's one of Hinch's claims to fame. We won't talk about the dancing just yet. But to say that the Formula One car is, you know, more special than that's saying something, right? You know, I've been to the Indy 500, fantastic event, but F1 is just another level up.
Yeah, I mean, the Indy 500 as an event, I don't think is matched in motorsports. I truly believe it is the greatest event on four wheels. And if you've never been to it and you're a race fan in any capacity, add it to your bucket list, because there's nothing quite like it. But just in terms of car performance, yeah, it's Indy, you know, the cars are designed to do a very specific thing, and at that track, they do a very specific thing well. An F1 car does everything exceptionally well. It's hard to think of something that it can't do well. And when you've got that amount of time, energy, resource, money that has been spent making these things what they are, it makes sense. No other sport, nor the motorsport, has that amount of resource to develop a car. But when you get, you know, 1,000 of the brightest minds and best engineers, mechanics, and I don't want to say unlimited budgets, but these teams have some money, let's be honest. And you let them go, it is truly remarkable what a group of human beings can create.
You've been around motorsport a long time. You mentioned that. You came through the single-seater junior categories. You've been around the sport, both sides of the fence. Could you imagine where we are in the United States today with the popularity of Formula One? And what does it feel like to be part of that circus?
No, I could not have ever imagined that we'd be here in terms of the popularity here in the States. You know, I grew up in Canada. I've lived in the States now for a bunch of years, and F1 was always a little bit more popular back home than it was in the States. In the States, it was IndyCar, it was NASCAR. F1 was kind of this thing that people knew about, but they didn't really know what. They knew of it, but not about it, if that makes sense. And now you cannot walk through a city, an airport, you cannot turn on a sports show without hearing something about Formula One. And what they've done so well, so brilliantly, largely through Drive to Survive, is captured an audience that aren't sports fans. A lot of them aren't even racing fans. They're fans of the human beings that are behind the show, the circus that we put on 24 times a year around the world. And that was just such a perfect storm of, that series being developed at a time when everybody was locked in their house and had nothing to do but watch Netflix. And it really just pulled the veil off what is such a fascinating, dynamic sport off the track. You watch a broadcast, you see the race. You don't really learn anything about how everybody got there, why they're there, what's going on behind the scenes. And that's really what Drive to Survive allowed people to see. And it's such a fascinating part of the sport.
I mean, I was a kid in the UK, and I can't believe the amazing level of fandom in the US. When I was a kid, even in the UK, I was the only person in my school that liked motorsport. So as you say, to walk down, through downtown in Austin and see all this merchandise and the hats and the jackets and everything else. I mean, first of all, people are making a lot of money out of that, but there is a huge interest in it. And as you say, I think it was the perfect storm, wasn't it? Drive to Survive coming out just when lockdown happened. But there is this sort of almost lazy answer that it's the Drive to Survive effect, but there's more to it than that, haven't they? Liberty have really changed up how Formula One is promoted.
They have, and it's about, if Drive to Survive was kind of the entree dish, right? It was the thing that maybe got certain people's eyes on F1 for the first time. You still have to have a compelling product week in and week out. If the show alone can't support the series, right? So the show allowed people to see a little bit about it, learn a bit about it, but then they started tuning in not just to the races, but what F1 did so well was really embrace this digital culture, this creator culture, and that's where so many of the young minds and young sports fans of today are consuming their information. So you opened this door, you created an entire new ecosystem online tailored to this new demographic, and that's something that Liberty and F1 have done better than any other sport, motorsports or kind of traditional stick and ball.
If you don't know the Race, which is the brand that we're partnering Axios with, we are the sort of sensible voice of Formula One. We cover the sport in a lot of depth. We're not there for clickbait. And depending on which channel we look at, 50% now of our fans are from the US, which again is a surprising statistic. But there aren't any F1 drivers from America on the grid. And being a Brit, I'm embarrassed to say there's 4 drivers on the grid from the UK.
You should be proud of that, not embarrassed. That's
I'm in the US, so I've got to show a little bit of humbleness. No humble brags here. And maybe next year we're going to have 5. Why? Just explain to everyone, I know, because I've studied it quite deeply, being embarrassed a little bit about it. Why isn't there a Formula One driver from the US? Here's a statistic for you. So if you're at the bar later and you want to give a nice statistic out that the people aren't here are listening to, since 1990, only 4 drivers from the US have been on the Formula One grid, and yet today there's 4 drivers from the UK. Why is that?
Money. And let me explain what I mean by that. So you got to fast forward. If you want to go all the way back.
By the way, I disagree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back to 1990, let's just go back 10 years before the sort of recent boom, right? And it's not just the boom in popularity, it's also what F1's done from a rule standpoint with cost cap and stuff. That's changed a lot of the dynamic. But let's go back 10 years plus. To race in Formula One, you had to be seen by Formula One teams. To be seen by Formula One teams, you had to race in F2 or the previous iterations, GP2, F3000, whatever. To race in F3000.
The good old days.
The good old days. To race in F3000 and be competitive, you probably had to grow up racing F3 around the tracks in Europe. You know the tracks, So in order to race in F3 in Europe, you kind of have to live in Europe. And to live in Europe, if you're from America, is an expensive proposition. Not only that, if you are a 16-year-old kid trying to move to Europe, that's, your schooling has to be considered. So you're either dropping out or you need tutors. So the only drivers from North America that really had the opportunity to even be noticed on the ladder system to Formula One needed more money than the average, even by racing standards. Everybody thinks of racing as a rich kid's sport, right? And to some extent, there's some truth to that. Even by racing standards in the US, you needed an exorbitant amount of money to be able to commit to moving over to Europe at a young age. And respectfully, you look at some of the ones from North America that have done it, Lance Stroll, Nicholas Latifi, Logan Sargent. A lot of these drivers came from a significant amount of wealth and were able to move over to Europe at a young age. So drivers that were born and bred in North America, cut their racing teeth here, were never really on F1's radar. And I think that's what made getting an American driver on the grid so difficult.
We sort of agree then. I've read a brilliant book which is called The Goldmine Effect, and it's explaining why Jamaican sprinters are the best in the world, why Kenyan runners are the best in the world. And if I leave my house in the UK, I can be at 10 go-kart tracks within 2 hours. So the founder of Axios, Roy Swartz, his son, they live in Washington, D.C. He told me to get to a go-kart track, they'd have to get on a plane to go to a go-kart track. I can just jump in my car and be at 10 go-kart tracks within an hour. And as you say, he's currently not here because he's racing with his son in Spain because he's got to move to Europe. And he's moved as a 16-year-old kid to Europe. So there is that. But I think it's about facilities. It's about the fact here, if you want to go racing, you're probably going in a circle on dirt track somewhere, and that means you're going to go and race in NASCAR.
Which, again, if you have the money to fly to go-kart tracks and be dedicated to it, you could have done it. But that limits the pool of drivers significantly. So we're saying the same thing. We're just at different levels of the equation.
I'm being embarrassed at the riches that we have in terms of motorsport in the UK. We might be fixing this. There might be an American driver coming through the ranks. Just tell us a little bit about that. He's coming from a very similar background to yours, Indycar. He's been very successful in Indycar. He's going to have a go at being the next American Formula One driver.
Yeah, Colton Herta. So a young Californian driver who's been racing in IndyCar now for 6 or 7 seasons. Exciting young kid. He's won a bunch of races. He's finished runner-up in the IndyCar Championship. And he's been given an opportunity through the newly formed Cadillac F1 team to be their test and reserve driver with an option to be on the grid in 2027. But in order to do that and kind of prove his worth, he is giving up a great career in IndyCar racing, where he is with one of the best teams, winning races, fighting for championships in Indy 500s, to go race F2, to learn the tracks, to learn the tires, to learn the culture, and prove that he has what it takes to make it to F1. So it's a very unique approach. We were chatting about this earlier, but it's a very exciting one, and it's one that I'm glad that he decided to take that chance. He was given that opportunity. He wasn't told by his boss, because his boss at Andretti and IndyCar is one of the same gentlemen that owns the Cadillac Formula One team, Dan Tauris, and he was sort of presented with this option. He went home, thought about it long and hard, and Colton is one of those young drivers who, though growing up in America to a father who raced IndyCar, by the way, his dream was actually always F1. He came over to Europe when he was 15, 16 and took a crack at it. It didn't work out. He came back to the States. They ran out of money, made a career there, and now he's sort of found this alternate route, and it's going to be very exciting to see how he gets on.
To see how he gets on, he's got to dethrone 2 of the most experienced drivers on the F1 grid, and big fan favourites. I'm sure there's favourites out there of Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. So not only has he got to prove himself in F2, which is very difficult, but he's also got to prove that he's better than those 2. Somehow, we've run out of time. I've only asked half my questions, but from your spot the other side of the fence in the commentary box as an analyst, knowing the sport very well, who's going to win at the weekend?
Honestly, I'm really excited about this weekend because it's one of the toughest ones to call all year long. Sprint races always tend to throw up a little bit of a weird result, especially in that sprint qualifying. And the nature of this racetrack, racetracks get lumped into high downforce tracks, low downforce tracks, long corners, slow corners. COTA kind of has a bit of everything. So Sector 1, a lot of long, fast corners. That's going to suit a McLaren. Sector 2 is kind of point and shoot, long straightaway. So anything that's very aero efficient, your Williams cars, your Red Bulls are going to be quick there. Third sector, low speed, mechanical grip. Ferrari, Mercedes kind of have strengths there. It's kind of tough to pick who's going to be quick over a whole lap. And again, the sprint concept and format really kind of throws it for a loop. So I have no idea.
That wasn't the answer I was hoping for there. But
and that's why you've got to tune in on Sunday on F1 TV.
There we go. So, as again, you are an insider in the sport. If there's one thing that the guys should look out for this weekend that might not be obvious, what's the one thing they should be looking out for that is just a curveball or something that not many people would understand about this particular race or where we are in the season? What's the one key thing?
I think after what we saw in Singapore, the most exciting thing to look out for is how the two McLaren drivers race each other. The the Constructors' Championship rather, is in the books. I know that the papaya rules, whatever they are, these mystical set of regulations, nobody knows, will have not changed, but driver mentality may have changed slightly. A, because the championship's locked up, and B, because there was a little bit of a disagreement, shall we call it, in Singapore. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on the two McLaren guys and very interested to see how they handle each other. And
as someone that benefits from drama in Formula One, I'd like to see them both not finish and Max come through, and then we have a three-way fight for the championship, which you heard it here first. Hinch, thank you very much. As he said, if you're not at the track at the weekend, watch you on F1 TV. Thank you all very much. We've got a very good conversation coming up next. You get a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
We've got a very interesting conversation up next